I gave my brother a place to stay. I didn't know he'd been sleeping with my husband for years. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Let's all be internet friends. He called me from the curb with the kind of voice people use when they don't want to admit they're crying. Said it wasn't that bad. Said it wasn't his fault. Said the landlord was crazy, the roommate worse, and the whole thing would have blown over if someone had just listened. I didn't ask for details. I just told him to come. Josh didn't hesitate. He never did when it came to Alex. He can stay with us, he said, already clearing out the guest room before I'd even hung up the phone. He didn't ask how long or whether Alex had a plan. He just moved things around and told me it'd be fine. Family first. That's what we always said. Josh knew what Alex had been through, the job losses, the flings, the half-finished restarts. He was my younger brother, and sometimes that felt like a second job. But he was blood. He'd shown up for me more than once, even if it meant calling at 2 a.m. or asking for money I'd never get back. I told myself this would be temporary. A few weeks. A place to land. Josh made it sound easy. We'd done harder things, fertility treatments, debt, job relocations. Letting my brother crash in our spare room felt like nothing. Alex arrived with 2 garbage bags and a box of clothes. No suitcase. No thanks, just a tired grin and a promise to get out of our hair soon. I believed him. The first night I made pasta. We ate on the couch like we used to when we first moved in. Josh poured wine. Alex did the dishes without being asked. It felt like something out of childhood, 3 people, shoulder to shoulder, pretending the world couldn't touch us. He complimented the paint color in the living room. Josh told him I picked it. I corrected him. Josh had chosen it. I just approved. They laughed at that. I joined in. It felt good to laugh again. Later, after Alex went to bed, Josh wrapped his arms around me in the kitchen and kissed the back of my neck. "You did the right thing," he whispered. I believed that too. It started off warm, familiar. Like we'd hit pause on the chaos for once. Alex helped in the kitchen without being asked, chopping vegetables the wrong way and blaming dull knives. Josh taught him how to use the espresso machine I never touched. Every dinner felt like a sitcom, 3 plates, too much wine, stories that ended in laughter even when they shouldn't have. The rhythm settled fast. Josh came home earlier than usual. Alex was already there, lounging on the couch or throwing something together in the kitchen like he lived there. And maybe he did. I couldn't tell anymore where guest ended and routine began. They clicked in ways I didn't expect. Josh was always a little stiff around new people, even family. But with Alex, it was easy, too easy. They shared music recs, laughed at things I didn't hear, teased each other like brothers. The banter started light, then got layered, full of callbacks and inside references I wasn't part of. I chalked it up to timing. Maybe they just needed it. Maybe Josh liked the company when I worked late. Maybe Alex was better at putting people at ease than I remembered. We started eating together more. Josh and Alex would talk through half the meal like I wasn't even there, tossing jokes back and forth, arguing about dumb things, movies, politics, who made the better omelet. Sometimes I caught Josh looking at Alex when he thought no one noticed. Not long stares, just half-second glances, like he was clocking something only he understood. One night, Alex reached for the bottle of wine and Josh grabbed it too, their hands touching. It was a blink, nothing more, but Josh didn't pull away. Neither did Alex. The moment passed, but it stayed with me longer than it should have. I told myself not to overthink it. Family dinners, laughter, wine, this was what normal looked like. Right, they were always near each other, not in a clingy, obvious way, just present, in the same room, on the same couch. Talking low, laughing quiet, always sharing something I wasn't part of. It started with late-night movies. I'd head to bed early, exhausted from work, and they'd stay up, just finishing the episode. But every time I woke in the middle of the night for water or to pee, the living room lights were still on. Flickers of sound, laughter, murmurs, the soft thud of someone shifting on the couch came through the walls. Sometimes I'd find empty glasses on the coffee table the next morning, or a throw blanket folded a little too neatly. Once I saw 2 mugs in the sink, both still damp. I asked if they'd stayed up late. Josh just shrugged and said, "We got into a show." That was it, they had a playlist too. Josh added Alex to the shared speaker app without telling me. I noticed when the music changed, different artists, more remixes. I asked once, joking, "Who's been hijacking our speakers?" Josh grinned and said Alex had better taste than both of us. Alex flashed a smile that didn't feel like gratitude. I caught them whispering once. At the kitchen counter, standing close. Not intimate, not romantic, just synced. Like the kind of closeness you don't build in a few weeks. Like it had layers beneath the surface. When I asked what was so funny, they looked up like I'd startled them. Josh said, "Just stupid stuff." Alex added, "Inside joke." I laughed along, but that phrase stuck, inside joke. Like I was outside something they weren't ready to explain. They weren't doing anything wrong, not on the surface. But I knew my husband's laugh. I knew the way his voice shifted when he was with someone who made him feel seen. I used to be the one who brought that tone out of him. Lately, it belonged to someone else. And that someone was sleeping down the hall. The bed felt different, not physically, not in any way you could measure with a scale or a sheet count. It was the space, the absence, the way Josh started coming to bed later and later, sometimes slipping in long after I'd stopped pretending to wait up. I'd ask if he was okay. He'd kiss my cheek, say work was crazy. Sometimes he'd mention a deadline or a problem with the firm's server. Once, he said he was too wired to sleep, needed to decompress. But the kisses got shorter, the touches more routine. Not cold, just mechanical, like he was checking a box. I noticed the shift before I wanted to admit it. It was in the way his body turned away after lights out. In the pauses that used to hold something tender but now felt loaded with distance. There was no tension, no fight. That would have been easier. There was just the slow, silent withdrawal of someone who no longer felt entirely in the room with me. I asked him once, "Are we okay?" He answered fast, too fast. "Yeah, just tired." I asked if work was stressing him out. He nodded. That and everything else. Everything else. I didn't ask what that meant. I just let it hang there while he reached for his phone like it was a life preserver. We used to touch in our sleep, feet tangled, his hand on my waist, the kind of closeness that never needed a name. That stopped too. Now there was a line down the center of the mattress that neither of us acknowledged but both respected. Sometimes I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was what married people meant when they said they grew apart. Like it was inevitable. Like it happened in increments too small to track until it became your whole life. I told myself he was tired. I told myself I was overthinking, that this happened, that it would pass. But in the dark, with his back turned and the silence louder than any snore, it didn't feel like a rough patch. It felt like an ending neither of us had the courage to name. It was 2:13 in the morning when I woke up, not from a noise. Just one of those jolts where your body senses something before your mind does. I lay still for a second, adjusting to the dark, the weight of the sheets, the shape of silence. Josh wasn't next to me. The bathroom light wasn't on. No flush, no faucet. Just empty air where his breath should have been. I got up slowly, not even fully sure why. Half asleep, bare feet cold against the hallway tile. I didn't call out. I didn't want to make a thing of it. That's when I heard its soft laughter. Not loud, not careless, but sharp enough to cut through the quiet. Alex. His laugh was unmistakable. A little high, a little breathless, the same one he used when we were kids and he got away with something. I couldn't hear Josh, but I didn't need to. That laugh was a response to something. Someone, then silence. I waited, barely breathing. A door clicked, then the front one. I moved to the window, peeled back a sliver of the curtain just enough to see the sidewalk. Two figures stood just outside the range of the porch light. One of them shifted. The taller one, Josh. The other leaned in, close enough to blur the space between them. They didn't stay long. A minute, maybe two. Then they walked off down the block together, heads low, voices too quiet to carry. I didn't wait up. I climbed back into bed, pulled the blankets to my chin, and stared at the dark until the hallway creaked again and Josh slipped back inside. He smelled like outside air and cologne. He didn't speak, just slid in beside me and fell asleep with the ease of someone who believed nothing needed to be explained. He didn't flinch when I brought it up. It was the next morning, over coffee. Sunlight slanting through the blinds, kitchen half clean, the day not yet pretending to be anything but ordinary. I asked if Alex was okay. Kept my voice casual, breezy, like I hadn't heard anything at all. Like I hadn't stood behind a curtain counting the seconds they stood outside together. Josh didn't pause, didn't blink. Just said Alex had trouble sleeping and he'd needed some air. Nothing weird, nothing dramatic, just a late-night walk to calm the nerves. He smiled when he said it like it was sweet, like he was being the good guy. Like I should have been proud of him for being such a supportive brother-in-law. I nodded. He didn't elaborate, didn't ask why I'd noticed. He poured more coffee, then changed the subject like a man who knew how to redirect a conversation without breaking pace. Later that afternoon, Alex made eggs, told me the night air helped. Said sometimes he just needed to move to shake off the static. That was the word he used, static, like the problem was the air, not what was happening inside him. Neither of them asked what I heard, because neither of them thought I heard anything. And I let them think that, because the truth was starting to unfold on its own and I didn't want to stop it. Not yet. I didn't plan to check it. Not at first. The doorbell camera was mostly for deliveries, the occasional raccoon, the kind of footage you review once and forget. But something tugged at me that morning, something about how calm they both were, how synchronized their story had been without needing to compare notes. So I pulled out my phone and scrolled. The footage loaded slowly, buffering on the grainy timestamp as I dragged the slider back to 2:11 am. The glow of the front porch blinked to life. And there they were, just as I'd seen from the window, only clearer now. Framed in sharp grayscale, Josh stepped out first. Alex followed, hoodie half-zipped, barefoot on the concrete like he'd done it before. They stood close. Not touching, not at first. Just that shared posture people have when there's nothing new to say but no one wants to go inside. Then came the movement. Josh turned slightly, said something I couldn't hear. Alex laughed, the same laugh that woke me. Then Josh reached out. A hand on the back of his neck. The kind of touch that comes from muscle memory, not impulse. Alex didn't step back. He leaned in. What happened next wasn't abrupt. It wasn't stolen or frantic. It was practiced. Familiar. A kiss, not quick, not testing, but slow. Full, like something they'd done before, like something they knew. I stared at the screen. There was no confusion in it, no fear, just certainty. They broke apart after a few seconds. Josh glancing toward the street, Alex rubbing his hands over his face like someone trying to re-enter a version of reality they'd agreed to leave behind. Then the door opened. They went back inside. The screen went black. I sat there, phone heavy in my hand, the image burned into the backs of my eyes. They weren't just close. They weren't just bonding. They were something else entirely. And I hadn't been in the room for any of it. The phone slipped out of my hand. Not dramatic, just gravity. Just shock in its simplest form. The soft thud of it hitting the carpet barely registered as I stared at the spot it had left on my palm. Like the warmth should still be there, like it should explain something. I picked it up again, opened the footage, pressed play. The porch light flicked on, Josh stepped forward, Alex followed. The kiss unfolded exactly as it had the first time. I knew it was coming, I watched it anyway. I paused mid-frame, zoomed in, not because I needed confirmation, because some part of me still wanted to believe there was room for doubt, that maybe I'd misread it. That maybe it was colder than it looked. Faster. Accidental. Something that could be explained with nerves, with confusion, with grief. But the image held. Josh's hand cupped the side of Alex's jaw, his thumb brushing just below the ear in a way that didn't belong to firsts. That was intimacy, rehearsed, trusted. Alex's eyes were closed. They'd done this before. I played it again. This time I didn't flinch. I watched the kiss, the break, the return indoors. I watched the lie fold itself back into my life like it belonged there. I thought about the laughter, the late-night whispering, the shared playlists, the way Josh's voice softened around him, how Alex never looked surprised to see Josh, only pleased. My hands were shaking now, not because I didn't know what I was seeing, but because I did, and it had never been about what they were doing now. It was about how long they'd been doing it behind my back. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't move much either. Just sat in bed with the phone beside me, the video paused, the timestamp glowing like a curse. 2:11 am. Etched now in something deeper than memory. I kept thinking it might vanish. That maybe by morning the footage would glitch, the kiss would blur, the whole thing would feel like a dream I could excuse away. It didn't. I watched it again. Not because I needed to, but because the repetition dulled the edge, made it feel less like a betrayal and more like a broadcast, something distant, something I could study instead of survive. The next morning, they acted like nothing had shifted. Josh kissed me on the forehead as he poured coffee, asked if I wanted oat milk or regular like we were still married, like our kitchen didn't sit on the fault line of something unspoken and enormous. Alex patted in a few minutes later, hair still wet from the shower, hoodie half-zipped. He grinned when he saw Josh. Not at me, I watched them. Every detail became evidence. The ease between them, the glances that didn't need permission, the way they moved around each other like the house belonged to both of them. I replayed the footage in my mind while Josh passed me the cream and Alex leaned against the counter, just a little too close. The worst part wasn't the kiss. It was how unremarkable it looked in daylight, like the house had already absorbed it, like I was the last one to realize I didn't belong in the story they were telling. I didn't say a word, not that day, not the one after. I moved through the house like a background character, watching the performance unfold around me. Every interaction between them became a scene. Every glance, every shoulder brush, every moment where their voices dropped just enough to signal something private. I stopped trying to be a part of it. They cooked dinner together, argued playfully over seasoning, shared headphones when they cleaned up, one AirPod each, heads tilted inward like they were syncing to the same frequency. Josh reached for a wine glass one night and Alex handed it to him before he asked. No cue, no pause, I set the table. I plated the food, I smiled when they laughed. They didn't notice me watching, or maybe they did. Maybe they'd gotten so good at the lie they didn't think it mattered anymore. Maybe they thought I wouldn't see it for what it was, not until I walked in on something worse, not until it couldn't be denied. But I already had. I had the kiss in my pocket, the footage, the proof, and still I said nothing. I needed more than anger, I needed clarity, a full picture, not just a moment but a timeline, a history. I needed to understand how deep this went. When it started, how many nights they whispered in the hallway while I slept on the other side of the wall, dreaming of a marriage that didn't exist anymore. The house was no longer mine. It was a stage, and I let the play run. Because endings deserve their final act. I started cataloging the lies, not out of obsession, out of necessity. I needed to understand the shape of it, the size. I needed to know when the world I thought I lived in started to rot from the inside. The business trip last spring, the one where Josh swore the hotel Wi-Fi was down. Alex had posted a picture the same weekend, tagged in the same city. Just a sunset, vague and easy to scroll past. But the date was exact. The overlap too perfect to ignore. 2 summers ago, Josh missed my birthday dinner, said he had a client emergency. Alex texted late that night, some excuse about not feeling well, skipping last minute. I remembered that message clearly now. I'd saved it without knowing why. Josh once told me he hated camping, said he couldn't sleep outdoors, hated bugs, the cold. But Alex posted a photo of a cabin last winter, wood stove glowing, boots by the door. The kind of trip you only take with someone you know won't ask questions in the morning. I made a list in my notes app. Bullet points, dates, flights, messages, things that didn't match, things I'd forgiven too quickly. Their birthdays were 2 weeks apart. Josh had always been terrible at remembering mine, but he never forgot Alex's. There was always a gift, always something thoughtful. Last year, a watch with an engraving I didn't get to see. I remembered asking what it said. Josh smiled and said it was an inside joke, said it wouldn't make sense to me. He was right. I stopped looking for a smoking gun. I already had one. But the timeline mattered. Because the moment I knew how far back it went, I'd know the scale of the betrayal. Not just that it happened, but that it happened while I was still trying to save something they'd already abandoned. I didn't tell anyone, not my friends, not my cousin who always said Josh smiled too easily around Alex, not even the friend from work who would have brought wine and rage and 100 ways to burn it all down. I stayed quiet, but I backed up everything. The footage first downloaded straight from the doorbell app to a private folder, labeled with a date that meant nothing to anyone but me. Then the screenshots. The kiss, the overlap in trips, the text threads. Every thread I pulled went into the same folder. Tidy, controlled, irrefutable. I copied it all to a flash drive, then to a backup email. One day I might need it for divorce, for court. For myself, because I knew the moment would come when they'd try to reframe it. Call it a mistake, say it was recent, say it didn't mean what it looked like, that it had only just started, that they were confused or broken or human. So I built a record, not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted the truth to have weight. Proof wasn't for them, it was for me. For the part of me that still second-guessed, still heard Josh's voice in my head telling me I was overthinking, too emotional, too much. I needed something that didn't waver, something that didn't shift under pressure. They kept laughing. They kept whispering in the kitchen when they thought I couldn't hear, and I kept smiling. Because soon the silence would end. And when it did, I wouldn't be empty-handed. Dinner that night felt like theater. I roasted chicken, set the table for 3, folded napkins the way I used to for holidays just to see if either of them would notice. Neither did. Josh poured wine. Alex made a joke about the smell of garlic meaning something good was happening. I smiled. Told them I used the recipe Josh's mother had given me last year. They laughed across the table like it was all still intact. Like the house hadn't shifted, like the air wasn't thicker, charged with something they didn't realize I could feel. Josh reached for the bread at the same time as Alex. Their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. I passed the vegetables, kept my expression still. Alex asked how work was going. I told him fine. Josh asked if I wanted to watch a movie later. I said maybe. Their voices never cracked. Their eyes never drifted to me long enough to register that I was somewhere else entirely. They were too focused on each other, too unaware that the audience was awake now. Every smile was a fracture. Every joke, a signal. I watched Alex pick at his plate with the kind of ease that doesn't belong to guests. I watched Josh refill his glass without asking. The rhythm between them wasn't new, it was old. Practiced. A comfort that only comes with time. And I sat there between them, steady as glass. Because this wasn't dinner, it was the final performance. And I already had the ending. I waited until the house went still. Josh's shoes were by the door. Alex's phone charger still plugged into the wall. Both their doors shut. No footsteps, no whispers, just the quiet hum of a refrigerator and the low tick of the thermostat kicking in. I walked through the house like it was a museum. Every room held a version of me I barely recognized. The hallway still had the dents from when we'd moved in and scratched the wall with the bed frame. The living room, Josh had picked the couch. I chose the throw pillows. We argued over the rug, then laughed about it for days. That laugh had felt real at the time. I stood in the kitchen longer than anywhere else. Stared at the spice rack, the drawer that always stuck, the wine stain on the floor no one could ever get out. We'd hosted holidays here, birthdays. I'd cried in this room and been comforted in this room, and all of it, every memory, now curled around something hollow. The guest room door was closed. I didn't open it. I didn't need to see where Alex slept. I didn't need to check if their shirts were folded together or if toothbrushes had started to match. Whatever line once divided what was his and what was mine had been erased before I ever gave him a key. I walked into our bedroom. The bed looked peaceful, deceptively so. I sat on the edge, let the silence settle. Then I opened my phone. The footage was already queued. 2 minutes and 16 seconds. Josh, Alex, the kiss. The way they moved like it wasn't a secret, like it hadn't been one for a long time. I hit share. Selected both names. No caption, no explanation. Just the truth, and then I pressed send. I set the phone face down and waited. The first reaction wasn't sound, it was absence. No footsteps, no door creak, no raised voices. Just the sudden, disorienting quiet that fills a space after a grenade goes off, not from the blast, but from the inhale before the dust knows how to fall. Then came the vibration. My phone skittered across the nightstand like it didn't want to be touched. Josh was calling. I didn't answer. A text came in before the ringtone even stopped. Please, let's talk. Alex's name followed, then Josh again. One after the other, like they were taking turns trying to breach a wall they didn't know I'd already built. It's not what you think. We can explain. Please don't do anything rash. Rash? As if I'd just discovered the betrayal that had been breathing beside me in bed for years, and the irrational thing was to respond. The phone kept lighting up. I didn't move. I imagined them in separate rooms, maybe standing in the hallway, maybe shouting in whispers. Or worse, arguing about how I'd found out, not what they'd done, trying to get ahead of the fallout, scrambling to figure out which version of the truth might still be salvageable. But there wasn't one, not anymore. I didn't need an explanation. I'd already watched it more than once. And the silence I gave them now was the cleanest answer they were ever going to get. I packed slowly. One bag, essentials only, clothes I actually wore. The toothbrush from the back of the drawer, not the one Josh and I used to share space with. No notes, no ceremony, just movement. Clean, controlled. The silence on the other side of the bedroom door was louder than before. They weren't pacing. They weren't knocking. Maybe they were waiting for me to yell, to break something, to cry. I didn't give them that. I wasn't leaving shattered glass behind for them to step over. I was leaving nothing. The last thing I folded was the black hoodie Josh always stole from my closet. The one that stopped going missing the moment Alex moved in. I placed it on top of the pile, zipped the suitcase shut, and stood for a second. My hand hovered over the light switch. I left it on, let them sit in what they'd made. In the living room, I scribbled 2 lines on the back of an old receipt. No salutation, no signature, just, "Take your time explaining this to each other." I placed it next to the remote. I didn't check the mirror before I left. Didn't look back down the hallway. I didn't need to. The house was theirs now. Every wall, every silence, every lie folded into the shape of domesticity. I locked the door behind me and booked a hotel 30 minutes across town, one with blackout curtains and no shared history. Just a clean bed and a bolt I could slide shut from the inside. That night, I slept like the house never existed. I told my cousin over lunch, not because I needed comfort, not because I needed someone to rage on my behalf. I just needed to hear the truth spoken out loud by someone who hadn't lived in that house. Someone who could say it plainly, without flinching. She didn't gasp, didn't cover her mouth or ask if I was sure. She just set down her fork, leaned back in her chair, and looked at me the way people do when they finally get to stop pretending they didn't see the thing everyone else missed. I always thought something was weird between them. That's what she said, not cruel, just honest. I didn't respond right away, just sat there letting it settle, letting the words land without soft padding underneath. She went on. Said she'd noticed things at holidays. The way Josh always found a reason to pull Alex into the kitchen. The long looks. The way they laughed like they were trying not to be overheard. How Josh always lit up when Alex walked in, and how it was never quite the same when I did. And still, no one said anything. Because you don't accuse someone of that. Not in a marriage, not in a family. Not when it's easier to believe in awkward closeness than calculated betrayal. I didn't cry. Neither did she. There wasn't anything left to mourn, just facts, just context. Just another person quietly admitting that I hadn't imagined it. The truth wasn't a wound anymore. It was a map, and I was finally reading it right. They didn't stop trying. The first week it was calls. Dozens of them, Josh mostly. His number blinking across my screen like a fire alarm I refused to reach for. He left voicemails too, each one a little more frantic than the last. Apologies wrapped in confusion, his voice cracking like he couldn't decide whether to beg or justify. Alex texted once, just one line, "Can we please talk?" I didn't answer. The second week, Josh switched tactics. He sent an email, long, formal, full of phrases like emotional complexity and lines we never meant to cross. He said he still loved me. He said it wasn't about betrayal. He said it just happened. It didn't just happen. Years don't just happen. A week after that, Alex showed up at my office. I spotted him from the reception desk, standing outside the glass doors like he wasn't sure if he'd come to explain or confess. He didn't see me at first. He was pacing, fidgeting, clutching something in his hands, maybe a letter. Maybe another version of the truth he hoped I hadn't seen yet. I didn't go out there. I called security. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic, just final. The guard asked if I wanted to file anything. I said yes, just in case. I walked back to my desk, sat down, typed the rest of my report like my life wasn't unraveling outside in real time. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe it had unraveled already. Maybe this was the rebuild. They took something from me. Not just the marriage, not just trust. Something deeper, something more interior. The quiet faith you carry in the people you let closest, the belief that home means safety, that family means loyalty, that love, if nothing else, won't lie to your face while holding your hand. That's what they stripped, not all at once, not with the kiss on the camera, but slowly over years, in the silence, in the stories that didn't line up. In the nights I spent wondering if I was too sensitive, too demanding, too paranoid. They had each other, they'd had each other, and they'd let me sit between them at dinner, cook for them, laugh with them, share a roof and a mortgage and a future they were never part of. They let me build a life around a hollow center, smiled while I decorated it, kissed me goodnight while someone else slept down the hall. I didn't take revenge. I took the lease to a new apartment. No shared walls, no shared furniture. No ghosts tucked into closets or tangled in the bedsheets. Just white walls, clean light, space I didn't have to make small for anyone else. I unpacked slowly, box by box. I didn't rush it. I didn't invite anyone to help. This space was mine. Every drawer, every switch, every decision. The last thing I plugged in was the new doorbell camera, a newer model, better resolution. I screwed it into the frame, tested it from my phone, watched the live feed of my quiet front step glow to life. Then I stepped back, watched the door click shut, and smiled. The couch was too stiff, the lighting too warm, nothing felt familiar yet, but that was the point. I didn't want familiarity. I didn't want muscle memory. I wanted space that didn't echo with laughter I now knew was never for me. There were no shadows in the corners, no framed wedding photos to take down, no toothbrushes to split, just me, my breath, my pulse, my name on the lease and no one else's. I opened the last box by the window. Books, some old journals. A picture I didn't remember keeping, a snapshot from years ago, back when it was just me and Alex at a beach somewhere, both of us sunburned and grinning, still young enough to think love couldn't twist like this. I slid it back in. The sun dipped lower behind the buildings. Traffic outside thinned to a hum. I pulled a blanket over my legs and let the stillness settle, not emptiness, not absence. Just the kind of quiet that doesn't need to be filled. The new doorbell camera blinked green, active, watching, recording. I checked the app one more time, crystal clear, no secrets. And when I stood to lock the door for the night, I didn't look back. They took something from me, but I took something back. And I would never let either of them near it again. Thank you for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I love you all.